Hey everyone. Well, new data shows that the moon is a lot older than once believed. Meanwhile, the Earth is a lot younger than previously thought.
Dropping sea levels expose ancient cave carvings and landscapes never before seen. What ancient remains have been uncovered after being hidden beneath dust and ice for millennia?
Speaking of bygone culture, why did the CCP intimidate South Korea into banning a performing arts group and also pressure Apple into strong arming Jon Stewart?
Join us, Ben and Rob from Edge of Wonder, for a deep dive into ancient history, a live Q&A, the top 10 weirder news of the week, and the answer to the question, why does the CCP hate fun?
So we'll see you guys out
on the edge of fun.
And are you listening to our Edge of Wonder podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or elsewhere? Please leave us a 5-star rating and review to help us reach even more people. And also remember to like, follow, subscribe on Rumble and YouTube and Ganjing World and everywhere else
and wherever else you are.
Yeah.
Ben, how you doing?
Pretty good, Rob. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it's been a pretty. I think it's safe to say that the weeks keep getting wilder.
Yeah. That is so true.
Twitter seems to be like the wild, wild west these days. And I kind of like just staying off of it, to be honest. It's a little bit out of control.
Yeah, it can be, but yeah, anyway.
Well, hopefully this episode gives you a break from all that.
Yeah, because there's just so much going on in the world right now that we were just like, let's just focus more on interesting things.
Exactly.
And especially with all the censorship right now too, it hasn't been easy, as you guys all know.
Yeah. Well, hey, I have a question for you, Ben.
Yes.
What would you do if you walked outside and you looked at your deck and there was a hole in it and the hole was smoking? Smoking hole in your deck.
Yeah, I would hope that someone didn't fire a cannon or or something fell from the sky. I would assume.
Yeah. So this Arkansas family suspects that a meteorite caused a smoking hole in their deck. Look at this.
Man, that's crazy.
So John Devane's family woke up to the smell of smoke in their house at about 3 a.m. They discovered the smoke coming from a hole in their deck, which had apparently caught fire. The flames were extinguished when a corner of the family's hot tub melted from the heat. Look at that. That's crazy. Causing it to pour water into the deck. So mysteriously, the firefighters investigated the hole in the deck and were unable to identify the likely cause other than that it appeared the fire had started from the ground up. So later, Devane used a magnet on the debris and found a small magnetic rock in the hole left by the fire. The U.S. Geological Survey can examine the rock, but it will take well over a year to complete. Why does it take them so long to complete that study? It's ridiculous. A year?
I have no idea. You know, and then the more I keep looking into these survey things or like these how like the scientists study like geology and how they like rate things and look at like how far back things are.
Right.
It's so flawed that it's actually comical. Like what they use and how they date these things now. It seems like it's very official, but then it's like, oh yeah, well we couldn't. It's hard to date a rock, so they find things that are like nearby to date it, and that's where
it's got to be the most inaccurate way to date something ever.
Yeah, it's so strange. It really is.
Why don't they just? And my question is like, why aren't they just open about that? You know, just say that you don't know. And tell us what you did so that we can scrutinize it.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
And then when you actually call them out, people will be like, just because you don't understand science doesn't mean they don't. It's
right.
Like, do you understand common sense? Actually kind of feel like we understand common sense and you don't. Like, why would you not question stuff? Isn't that the whole idea behind science, is to question?
I mean, it completely is. I mean, that's what you do. You ask questions in science, and then you do research based on those questions, and you test hypotheses, and then do conduct studies and whatnot. And then it's like, oh, okay, this is either this way or that way, and here it is. But it's
Yeah.
not like that
And you can just say,
anymore.
to our best knowledge, it's this, but it's limited, instead of like writing it in stone, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
it's
and
so frustrating.
it really is. I think that's it. Well, and and obviously we kind of know why now it is that way. Especially when there's a lot of money involved, or somebody who's like life work. It's like, oh, I've researched this for 60 years and I wrote the book on everything that or there is to know about this XYZ topic. And then it's like, as we're going to get into our weirder news, we're going to find out that a kid kind of flips the whole medical industry upside down. And it's like, if a kid can do this, why can't, companies that are making lots of money and have lots of resources be able to do something like this, So we're going to get into that when we do our weirder news segment. So if you like what you're hearing here, all this like weird stuff, later in the show, we have a Rise.tv exclusive segment called the Top 10 Weirder News of the Week. So we have a miracle, an ancient weapon uncovered, someone stuck in a really unfortunate place, and a kid that turned the medical industry upside down. So we'll get onto that later in the show when we get over to Rise TV.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So next is, the moon is way older than they thought. Here's a geochemical perspective letters.org article here.
What is going on in this photo?
I feel like this is lewd.
Okay, this is the Apollo 17 mission.
He's using his Dyson to vacuum the moon.
Yeah. Speaking of well, yeah, okay. You can get into this, and then we'll kind of.
Well, yeah. So using an atom probe tomography, that must be what that is. Although, wait. Yeah, no, I know. I'm thinking of that photo and thinking that was them on the moon, but they haven't been to the moon in like 70 years, have they?
Yeah, 19. What?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, this is like a big Mandela effect.
Oh,
right?
It is. That was
like everyone remembers one moon landing, and we were like, we only went to the moon once, but actually, there's been 24 Americans that walked on the moon. So they say. And I can't remember if Apollo 17 or 18 was the last mission. I think it was 18. It was the one. All this weird.
I remember. Yeah, I remember us doing that episode and being. It was Apollo 17, I think.
Yeah, I think you may be right. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioned in a video that we haven't been to the moon. Like, we went once and we haven't been back. So it's like, clearly,
why is there mass confusion around this?
Well, I mean, this is like, it's really funny because like when we first started doing Edge of Wonder and we were talking about the moon landing and everything, I went to like very extremely educated people that, have degrees and everything else. And I was asking them, how many times we've been to the moon? And like every one of them said, well, we only went once.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And then it's like, oh, this is so weird, So yeah, the moon landing is definitely a weird one for me. And we were kind of talking about that prior to the show starting, about how you brought the point about other languages, which kind of blew my mind.
Oh yeah. Well, so, what we were saying was like, there's all of these different Mandela effects that people are finding. Some of them are lamer than others. Some of them like seem like there's a lot there. I was just thinking, like, we're only on this show documenting those cases that are in English. Like, imagine what's happening in every language. Like, I'm not even close to aware of what's happening in every single different culture. Like, Are these happening in Italy? Are these happening in France? Are these happening in China? China's a massive country. Like,
Mhm.
imagine the implications of one character being changed in Chinese. Like, it would change everything. Like, that's like crazy to think about, you know?
Yeah, it is. I haven't, and when you brought that up, it kind of blew my mind because I was like, that's something I haven't even really looked into as much as I like dived into the Mandela effect.
Well,
I haven't really looked into like other countries.
hard to look into. I mean, you don't speak any of those languages. Like, you need to find someone who can help you.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Hard follow.
true. But I wonder, yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to come across something, or like anyone listening to this, comment, like make a comment below this video and let us know if if you're from another country or you speak another language, if you ever came across anything, because I'm really, really curious to know about that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. It's like, because there's no way it's only happening in English and in
Mm.
America. It's got to be in other places too, and other either pop culture or history or
Mm.
any of the above. So I think it's a good point.
Well, okay, back to the moon here.
Yes.
Right. So the moon is way older than they thought. So using atom probe tomography, scientists investigated zircon grains brought back by the Apollo missions and found them to be 40 million years older than they originally thought, which is a very specific date. So I'm imagining that it could be a lot more than that even.
Considering what we were just talking about
Yeah.
how science, dates things. So does make you question a lot.
So yeah, this new info places the birth of the moon at around 4.46 billion years ago, but let us remind you that they really have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously.
You know, one of the things that I was seeing today, and this is kind of interesting, is that they now this is like I don't believe anything on the moon, just so that you guys know, but if this is true, it's interesting because my my theory is that the moon was put there by something. I don't know what. It can't. Why is it hollow? It doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. Okay. They found that the rocks on the moon were very identical to those found on the earth, which would mean that potentially something hit the earth, like a comet or something massive hit the earth and something broke off and then it created the moon, which I don't think happened. But a
Yeah.
comet could have hit the earth and then it could have sprayed earth rock onto the moon. That's possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we really dived into this on a couple different episodes. We have a whole moon series too about what really happened on the moon, or at least what we think. Um, but yeah, like one of the other theories is that it was just a big, huge comet that was traveling through our solar system, and it got pulled on Earth's gravitational pull, and then it just kind of locked in place that way. However, what a lot of scientists that are more open minded said about that was that it would be impossible because the sun's gravitational pull is so much stronger, and the moon is big. The moon is like 30% of
Keep that up,
um,
Lindsay.
the moon is, well, Earth is 30% more of the moon. So like the moon is 30% of the size of the Earth, which most moons in our solar system are only like 5 to 10 at the very, very most. Most of them are just around like 5. So our moon is huge. And so most scientists were saying that if that were the case, it would have gone to the sun and not our Earth, because or to another planet like Jupiter, which is so much bigger, and the gravitational pull is so much bigger.
You want
So
you want to hear something crazy?
yeah.
So I have been attempting to traverse accounts of the moon in Chinese language with the help of one of my friends that can speak Chinese.
Mhm.
I found one I don't know what you want to call it, like one account where it literally described the moon on the dark side exactly like this picture right here. That it is elliptical and it's carved open on the inside and you can see on the inside of it. So all we can see,
That's crazy.
on the other side
Mhm.
is like the roundness of the moon, but on the other side, it's exactly like this. And that you
That's
can see the inside of
crazy.
it, and it's like something like this on the inside. And that's why we've never seen, like, we're seeing fake pictures of the dark side, like
That's
what NASA
weird.
is showing us.
Yeah, and what Lindsay's showing right now is our rise.tv where you can actually watch all those episodes we have. And this actually kind of so in the 60s, there was actually a top secret program that got declassified, I think in the 90s, called Project Horizon.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is honest to God. This was a true program. You can look into it, and this is a whole document that was classified. And if you go to page 24, Lindsay, it actually shows a photo of what Project Horizon was. After Roswell, they realized that there was this alien threat, and the goal was to literally build a base on the moon. And they were going to use NASA at the time was first a government organization, and they were going to use NASA as a front for like, oh, we're going to go to the moon. But in reality, they were like secretly going to build like a base in
But
Brazil.
isn't that what they actually did, though? What you
I
just
think they
described?
actually did this
Yeah.
years later. I don't know if they did. It's because actually what happened, it looks like, um, because Kennedy was on board. And that's why Kennedy was like really adamant about we're going to send person to the moon. And because according to what a lot of the researchers and the people that were presenting this said years and years and decades later was that they actually briefed Kennedy on the situation. But the other aspect, what they said in this document, which it's like in passing, is that they believed that there was an alien base on the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
And that because of it, they were worried that well, and according to what a lot of the research I was doing, they were the ones interfering with a lot of the Apollo missions, which seems to be why we stopped going to the moon, because it was becoming they were getting more
I was
hostile.
gonna say they're becoming more aggressive, probably.
Yes. Yeah. Which if you and again, I can't remember the last one. You said Apollo 17. I can never remember if it was 18 or 17 or 18, but one of them supposedly had like a crazy something really intense happened during that mission, and one of the astronauts kind of like went insane. And
Yeah,
supposedly
Buzz Aldrin is definitely insane. I'm just kidding. It probably wasn't him, it was someone else.
but yeah, anyway, so it was really fascinating. But get to your point that you said, even though this was never carried out, and they were secret, like I said, they were secretly going to build a base in Brazil and like launch things in space and start sending up payloads and then build the
Why
structure.
Brazil?
um just because it was at the time in the 60s, it was like there was a
Because they like
large,
the steak in the Brazilian steakhouses?
maybe that's it.
Brazilian steakhouses are amazing. But I just don't like, is it
Brazilian.
closer to the
Oh, yeah, it was close
atmosphere?
to the equator. That was it. That
Ah,
was the excuse they used, because the closer to you are to the equator, the effects of gravity is a little bit different. And
yes.
so it was like they could send a rocket with not having as much fuel as it would be from like, sending up in the US somewhere, like in Florida. So that was it. They were trying to get to the close to the equator as
Well, and that's
possible.
why our flights places are in Texas and in Florida, because the
Florida
southernmost part of the
of
United States is
the United
closest to the
States.
equator, right?
Yeah. They
Mm.
probably have secret bases. And by the way, this was part of US Space Command at the time. And then because NASA then went to like a civilian thing, and then NASA kind of shut down this program, this Project Horizon. And then US Space Command was formed. And now we have, of course, Space Force. So,
Space Force.
yeah. All right. We need to get into a trailer, and when we get back, we'll continue this conversation. And we're going to show what we have on rise.tv.
And Ben, is going to moon you. Just kidding. Go ahead.
I assure you, vampires are just in the movies. I would swear it on my soul, if I had one. What truths are lurking in our legends? They couldn't possibly be based on a real-life monster, could they? Vlad the Impaler was not just known for his war tactics. Some say that he was also the world's first vampire, Dracula. But is it all just a batty tale? Or are the movies talking about something real? Find out in part 1 of Edge of Wonder's Halloween series, Vlad the Impaler and Dracula.
La. I just want to say that every time I see Dracula.
Oh, Dracula. And oh yeah, next week is going to be our Halloween live. That will
our Halloween super show.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
It's Tuesday.
No, it's this Tuesday coming up. Yeah,
this Tuesday.
And we're gonna have to get you in front of some kind of like flashlight or something and tell
ghost
stories then.
Yeah, we can figure out. Maybe
we'll get like a fake fire. Something.
Yeah, I can use the green screen actually.
Let's do that.
Okay,
Has to be video though.
Yeah,
like real and real in front of a fire.
Unfortunately, I don't have a fireplace in Florida. So
I'm just gonna set my studio on fire. So
that would
probably be work an awful idea.
Yeah, not a good idea.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
So all those episodes for Halloween are on Rise.tv right now, and we've got an awesome lineup, super cool stuff. Cleveland Torso Murders, we've got vampires, the Salem Witch Trials, we've got the Ohio Melon Heads, we've got creepy forests, you name it. You'll be entertained for Halloween. If you'd like to support our work, we could really use the help. And you get so much in return, so many videos, like hundreds and hundreds of videos. You could probably search for anything on there and find an answer to it. We've done tons and tons of research. I mean, think about how many hours we've spent in front of the camera making all of this stuff. It actually kind of blows my mind after a while.
I don't even know. Gosh, yeah. That's crazy to think about how many hours are spent in front of the computer in general.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, those vampire ones are really, really interesting. It goes all the way from back in time to now. Oh, this one right here, the Saint Germain one. It's a really cool dig on Saint Germain, who is this reported figure in history who is said to have never died. And John reveals some crazy remote viewing data in that episode. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we just released our ghost ships. So those are the two most recent shows that Rob and I for Edge of Wonder have for our produced show. And then of course we have also like scary hauntings and mysteries. And then we also have the Cleveland Torso Murders. So, and then you have some stuff that you did for Metaphysical too. So,
yep. Yeah. So, here it is, just to kind of wrap up that last subject on the moon. The Earth may have formed over 100 million years, but some of the older remains that are being dated could be from other celestial debris that combined to form that Earth. So here's this article here, Earth younger than previously thought, says scientists. Now, ancient civilizations remains that we find here may have actually come from a chunk of another planet that eventually ended up here when the Earth formed. Like, that is a crazy concept. Think about that for a second. Some of the stuff that's like, who knows when those pyramids are from?
Yeah, seriously.
You know?
Well, I mean, and that could explain a lot. Like for example, the 2 billion year old nuclear reactor that we've covered.
Republic.
You know, yeah, exactly. You know, and it's like it's we've talked about it. It's 100% true. They found this nuclear reactor. They can't really explain it. They're like, oh, it's the only natural nuclear reactor we have ever found, even though it has a very rational layout. Like we break it down in the video. Even had an area where it was disposing all of the what I want to say, all of the leftover
Uranium.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the uranium
Hmm.
in that mine had been extracted and utilized.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what's that? Like, you don't do that unless you're an intelligent species. Like, that doesn't just
It
happen
just
naturally.
can't happen in nature. Yeah. I mean, it was like it was literally like, okay, we're gonna extract this ore, we're gonna process this ore, and then it's like, it was all like,
Yeah, think about how, like, if you guys watched Oppenheimer, like how hard it was for them to get that uranium into one place so that they could use it.
yeah,
It was like a very intent-filled, you know, like process. I mean, it's crazy. And uranium is like scattered about, like you have to pull it out. And it's only in these like little pockets that you can get it. I mean, it's not easy.
right. No, well, yeah, okay, and then the nuclear waste aspect. That's what I was trying to say. The plutonium, and they were like, if you read prior to really what they found, it's like, oh, plutonium. It's impossible for plutonium to be naturally occurring in nature. And then all of a sudden they found this nuclear reactor and they're like, oh, plutonium can be made in nature. But it's like, no, it really can't. It's like,
No.
you need water so pure. You need like, you literally need like a reactor to make plutonium. Like you just can't produce it. So anyway, the point of all of that was, yeah, it's like, who knows? If the Earth is like 4 billion years old, then it's like, who knows what has happened in those 4 billion years? I mean, so much would be decayed over that time that we wouldn't even find anything, like hardly anything left. It would just be either destroyed underwater or in rock in the earth or something. So, who knows? Like, yeah, what's crashed into our planet, what's formed in our planet, our planet could have even been bigger than it was. And like, and some asteroid came and like, who like there's so many variables.
Well,
And again, science won't really get into it.
And speaking of that, this ancient face carving was found as the Amazon water level drops to record lows. Like, look at this. So this is crazy.
This is crazy.
It says now this is so, I just like, this is what kills me. Like, can you pull that article back up? It says human faces sculpted into stone up to 2,000 years ago. You're telling me this happened 2,000 years ago? Like, how do you even know that? This could have been 40,000 years ago.
And again, they can't look at the rock. So this is because I've been studying this, like how scientists actually carbon date something, and they can't look at the rock, because if they look at the rock itself, well, the rock may be like 1 billion years old or whatever, so it's like we can't really look at when this was carved by looking at the rock. So what they have to do is look around the area and look for any kinds of like ancient tools or some kind of weapons or anything that they can find to use. In one site, they used a piece of wood that was found, and that's how they carbon date something. And it's like, really? It was a piece of wood? I mean, it's like,
yeah,
that could be anything, So it's, again, that stone, it's just hard to say, it's like 2,000 years ago. Okay, maybe not, could be way older than that. But the ironic thing about this is that we keep being told that the water levels are rising when they actually seem like they're going down. So
yeah,
it's another thing that's kind of weird. It's like I was seeing all these photos that it was, or these articles back in the 50s and 60s, 70s, saying that, eventually the Statue of Liberty will be kind of like underwater at the base. And it's like, hasn't really changed much.
No, I mean, the only way that would happen, I think, is if the sea levels rise, right? So I think Antarctica would have to melt significantly in order for that to happen.
Well, even Antarctica, it's a continent. So even if the ice melts, it's not like it's really.
Oh no, dude, there's 3 miles of ice on top of Antarctica. There's
Yeah.
so much ice on the top
Yes.
of Antarctica that it's putting pressure on the continent and sinking the continent into the ocean, which has raised the levels more. It has 90% of the Earth's fresh water in that 3 miles of ice on Antarctica. So if that crap melts, you're talking about the sea levels going up 40 feet.
Well, this is again according to science. This is
Well,
why
I mean,
it's hard.
I mean, there's certain things though where it's like, is there 5 feet? No, there's not 5 feet of ice because we're seeing mountains peeking up over the ice just a little bit in certain areas.
Right.
So it's like that would indicate that that's like 15,000 feet of ice in those areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the other aspect is you could take a glass, fill it completely with ice, and then fill it with water, and then it just melts, and then it's like it's not going to overflow, right? But I guess if you have a bunch of ice that's like on
Yeah, but
top,
it's on top. Like, I don't even,
then
how did that happen? Like, if that
maybe.
all melts and
Yeah.
goes into the water, it would raise sea levels according to them
Yeah.
by 40 feet, which would, I mean, our shores would come in like a significant amount. We would lose stuff.
We
Manhattan
would,
might be gone.
but it's not like global catastrophe. Like I don't see it.
No,
but
it's not global catastrophe, but it would screw things up. It certainly would, you know?
yeah. Now, if something massive fell in the ocean, like a meteorite, like a gigantic meteorite, the size of like Manhattan or something, then yeah, that would cause a massive.
Oh yeah,
that would
world's over.
Yeah, that would be bad.
So check this out. Scientists discover ancient landscape in an area on Earth less well known than the surface of Mars. That's a really complicated headline.
That is a really complicated.
Let us translate for you.
So, like, scientists discover ancient landscape in an area on Earth less known than the surface of Mars. That's
right. Yeah. So an ancient landscape hidden under the East Antarctic ice sheet for at least 14 million years has been revealed with the help of satellite data and planes equipped with ice penetrating radar. So these planes with ice penetrating radar and all of this has basically uncovered the topography of the land there. So scientists use the remote sensing techniques to map 32,000 square kilometers. That's 12,300 square miles of land, an area around the same size as Belgium. That's a lot. Yeah. They discovered a landscape formed by rivers prior to the continental buildup of the East Antarctic ice sheet that would have once resembled the hills and valleys of present-day North Wales. The well-preserved nature of the landscape makes it particularly special. It is rare to find relatively unmodified landscapes underneath a continental ice sheet. Normally, the movement of the ice as it fluctuates in size and moves would erode and grind down the relic landscape. So the research team does not know what plant and wildlife might have once inhabited the area, but the evidence of rivers suggests flowing water was present, making it highly likely the landscape was vegetated. Now, the reason why they were saying that this landscape is known less than Mars is because it's easy to see the surface of Mars, even with telescopes. It's very, very difficult, according to them, to see the topography of Antarctica through the ice sheet.
Well, and then when you use Google Maps, it everything's blurred out or blown out now, so you can't even look at it. So who knows? The question is, like, who knows what they're finding down there? That's always been the major question about, why are so many resources going to Antarctica? Of course, the other aspect is like, you wanted to do something in secret or build some kind of secret base. I mean, no one's going to bother you there. So
yeah,
you're totally hidden from, this kind of goes into the flat earth theory, I mean, this is why I think, you know, they're promoting the flat earth theory because it even hides even more what they're doing in Antarctica. If Antarctica doesn't exist, then it's like, oh, then we can do whatever we want
Well,
now.
not only if it doesn't exist, but if most of the things that they're doing are to study and do communications or comms in space, then it would serve them well for this flat earth theory to be spreading around, because then you're never going to imagine that they're doing that stuff down there. And that could be its main purpose.
Yeah, it could be 100%. And I mean, and also like we have no idea what they're capable. I mean, I'm talking about like, you know, whoever is kind of in control at this point, like what they're capable of building. I mean, they could literally have something, maybe not as the scale as the Death Star, but I mean, you know, obviously we have the International Space Station, right? But it makes me definitely question that they've probably got something way more sophisticated out there. And that's like the public, everyone knows about that, but there's probably something else, and they could be experimenting with all kinds of like communication aspects that we can't even like comprehend. Maybe even like psychic, you know, trying to enhance psychic abilities to
like some Montauk Project stuff down there.
Yeah. I because I mean, it seems like a lot of the alien crafts that's how a lot of them are being flown, is that, you know, all through like a mental connection. So if that's the case, then you could take that one step further and be like, what if we can like send signals to each other, and then we wouldn't really necessarily need like either technology or, you know, a mass amount of equipment if we can figure out how to amplify, because all it is just wave patterns. And if you could figure out how to find those wave patterns and send it out and receive it, then it's like, you know, whether through a machine or through another device that someone is hooked up to, then it would probably be pretty easy to do in the long run. So anyway, well, okay, we're going to show another trailer, you guys. We're going to show the Cthulhu and the Kraken for our Seas episode, and then we'll get back and we'll start talking about how the CCP hates entertainment.
Seafaring voyagers traverse the vast seas, sailing for distant lands, lost treasure, ferocious sea beasts, and new worlds beyond the old. But what if their searches across the ocean surface miss truths that lie much deeper? What secrets hide in the Bermuda Triangle? Why do octopuses exhibit an ethereal intelligence we can't quite explain? Are sightings of the Kraken and giant squids more than mere stories? Some creatures have been found to not just survive, but to thrive at depths and conditions we never thought possible. Which begs the question, what has been written off in history as imaginings or myths that may actually be pointing to other dimensions, alien worlds, or fantastic beings that aren't supposed to exist? Join Edge of Wonder for a deep dive into the cryptids of the abyss.
What has hooves, a goat's head, bat wings, and a forked tail? It's the Jersey Devil, the mysterious cryptid that haunts the forests and skies of New Jersey. But this beast has a story beyond legend. Locals actually claim to be descendants of the original Jersey Devil. What unexplainable things have happened that would convince anyone this creature is lurking in the shadows? Why were Ben Franklin and Teddy Roosevelt part of the story? What kind of devilish, winged lizard beings are really hiding out in the cosmos? Are all claims of the Jersey Devil just a hoax? It's time to crack open the Edge files and pull out one of our most classified cases yet. As we ask, is this flying fiend real? Find out all about it in Tales of the Cryptids, Episode 2, The Jersey Devil. Only on edgeofwonder.tv.
Yeah, welcome back. So the Jersey Devil. That was a crazy episode.
Yeah, it was. So we had a few cryptids that we did with dragons, Jersey Devil, Mothman. All on, you can find those all on rise.tv, and then also the seas too. And then it kind of goes into the cryptid aspect of
when you were talking about the seas, you're like, the seas, matey.
Matey. But yeah, so anyway, you can all find that on
rise.tv.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
So yeah,
Jon Stewart.
Tell me a little bit about this, Ben.
Yeah, so this is really fascinating because Jon Stewart and Apple parted ways over disagreements about China. So, and believe it or not, Jon Stewart's show wasn't really that popular for the first season. In fact, Apple was thinking about canceling his show, and then by the second or third season, it just blew up, and he actually got an Emmy nominated for an Emmy for his show. And so he wanted creative direction over his show. That was one of the things that he was really adamant about. And then Apple was bowing down to China, and the word he used was hamstrung. He said he refused to be hamstrung by Apple. And so they parted ways. So, I mean, this is a major thing for him, because I mean, you imagine like you have this super successful show on Apple TV, no less. And then all of a sudden, you're like, I'm not going to give into what China wants. And even though Apple is, and he just walked away.
Well, yeah. So we all know that all of Apple's products are made in China. They're trying to actually get away from that now, it seems. They're trying to start getting them made, at least in part, in India. And stuff like that. And I don't think that this is unique to just Apple. I think a lot of other companies are seeing like, hey, we need to get out of Apple. Like we need to get out of China. They're partially insane. So what looks like happened is, Jon Stewart is creating a show. It's a show on politics. So Apple knowingly invited a show on politics onto their platform, I guess, to try it out. And then when the rubber hit the road and Jon started to want to talk about the truth about China and start hitting them on stuff because they're actually crazy.
Right. Yeah.
China probably picked up the phone and said, hey, if you want to keep making iPhones, you're going to shut this guy up. And so, bless you, Apple, probably picked up the phone and tried to start a nice conversation with Jon. And Jon was just like, look, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about China. This is my show. Like, no, you cannot tell me what to talk and not to talk about. I think probably just because of his, right to, or for like freedom of press, really. And the reality is that the corporations are going to dictate what these media companies that they hire are going to say. That's what happens every time. And Jon walked instead, which, I don't blame him. I don't always agree with everything Jon says or does, but at least he was right on this.
I mean, it's pretty amazing because not many people are really able to stand up to China amidst like, some kind of personal gain that they would have or lose in this case. But actually he did a show. So him and Seinfeld guy, can't think of his first name, but anyway, Jerry Seinfeld. So they had a show called something about driving. I don't know. They were in their car anyway, and they were just like go around different things
It
and
was
just
like
have,
driving with comedians or something.
yeah, it's something like that. And one of the
Comedians in cars getting coffee.
yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. And in one show that they had, they're in New York and they came across Falun Dafa practitioners protesting, mostly just meditating in front of the Chinese consulate in New York. And so they actually like talked about this, and they were criticizing the CCP in the video and just talking about like why they're doing, why they're out there, and they're just these peaceful meditators, and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting that they actually had that in one of their shows. So I think that he's like pretty clear on, really how evil the CCP is and what they've been doing. And
Oh,
so
and how scary what they've been doing recently is,
Mhm.
anyone with their eyes half open can see it,
Yeah, or anyone can actually, like, everyone can see it. It's more of like if their eyes focused on money or or the truth about what's really happening in China. So
So in 2021, it was reported by the New York Times that Apple agreed to store the personal data of its Chinese customers in a database whose computer servers are controlled by a state-owned company. You know
yeah.
what that means?
Well, I mean, China moved even for Americans, they moved all of their cloud servers over to China.
Well,
So
I mean,
it's like,
any servers in China, even if they're
mhm.
in Apple's factory, are
Yeah,
being like
yeah. It's
controlled by the
it's all
CCP.
yeah.
To me,
Anything in China is being controlled by the CCP at this point.
what that seems to mean is that was like a measure of strength there, that China was trying to force them to do something that they wanted them to do. Like they're probably doing that all the time, really testing stuff with them. And this is probably why Apple is trying to pull out and find places elsewhere to get their phones made, like India or wherever.
Well, and even in that situation, it was really hard to find information about the Indian company that was supposedly going to make the iPhones. I don't know if they've made the switch yet. Apple announced it. It was hard to find a lot of information on this, but what I found was that the Indian company was still owned by a Chinese company. It's like it was like they just opened a factory in India, but it was still kind of owned by China. So it's like by them moving over, are they really escaping from China, or is it just like, oh, well, it's just like, we'll just do this over here, but it's like, kind of one and the same. And then also a lot of the Indian workers that were there were complaining because Apple didn't want to pay them as much. They still wanted to pay what they were paying the Chinese employees. And it's like, well, it's not going to fly in India because it's almost slave labor what's happening in China. So with Foxconn, and we've done a lot of deep dives into Foxconn, but if you don't know, Foxconn is what makes most of the electronics overseas. And people who do like you're essentially, it's almost borderline slave labor. Like you work, live, and eat in the same building, and it's very strict hours, and you don't really get overtime. And there's been multiple suicides that have happened, which is why Apple has been so criticized so much, because they're very vocal about all your whatever your what is that? Those scores and,
Oh, the
being,
ESG scores.
yeah, and all of that and everything else. But when it comes to China,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
they're
it's
very
like
closed.
it's all like virtue signaling, really. They're like
Mhm.
talking about climate change and all of this stuff, and then you've got what's really going on in China being a completely different issue.
Yeah.
Like, well, I wish we would care about people as much we would care about like climate change, because the ESG score is like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No one's paying attention to no, because every company is using China, and that's the big issue.
Well, and really the question is like, what hasn't China, the CCP, what haven't they gotten their little tentacles into? I mean, here we have it. Like, South Korea blocks U.S. performing arts company, raising concerns over Chinese influence. Did you see this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's wild. So South
Yes.
Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol was elected in 2022 on a platform that promised to bring the nation closer to the United States and take a stronger stance against Beijing. And here they are going completely the opposite way. Yeah, so that commitment from Mr. Yoon is now being put to the test as an American performing arts company has been told that it can't perform in South Korea as a result of influence from the Chinese Communist Party. Local Shenyang organizers say that Seoul's two major theaters have so far rejected the group's bid to perform as a result of pressure from the CCP. Internal documents obtained by the Epoch Times reveal that the Chinese embassy in South Korea has for years waged an intimidation campaign aimed at both theaters as well as the South Korean government, threatening economic and political repercussions if the country allows Shenyang to perform there. Economic and political repercussions. So they're threatening them with money. Well, listen to this. Quote, "We are not trying to make things difficult for Shenyang, but the Chinese government is going to inflict tens to hundreds of billions in damage to us. So what can we do?" Bo-hee Park, then retired vice president of the Tongil Foundation, which owns the theater, later told Shenyang's local presenters, adding that he wished Shenyang success.
Yeah, this happened a few years back. Shen Yun was going to perform in Korea, and actually the theater was sold out, everything was set, and it was days before the performance, and a couple people within Shen Yun, some of the main lead dancers, they were denied visas to go to Korea. It was like a whole bunch of them, actually, I think. And so for that reason, they were not able to perform. And it was a big ordeal. And because it was like, even it seemed like the theater was fine with it and everything else, but it was like some local government official that stopped it. And again, it was because of the pressure of the CCP. And it's not like I don't think they don't want them to perform. It's just that, it says, you read it right there, hundreds of billions of dollars in damage to us. So what can we do?
How is that possible though? I kind of want details on that. Like, can't you just, they're not even a part of your country. What are they going to do? Come in? Just have the president tell the United States. Theoretically, not that Biden's going to do anything, but you know what I mean?
Right. I don't know how much of Korean products are made in China, because they're so close and they have a very close relationship.
I think like most things the CCP does, it's a bluff. It's like they put all of these forces on the edge of China facing Taiwan and do nothing. They're constantly threatening to take over Taiwan. They make all of these moves and do nothing. Like, isn't this just probably a bluff? What are they going to do?
And like, yeah, you're right. Like, inflict hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, that's a lot of money.
That's like excessive.
The only thing I can think of, I don't know. I don't even know. And this is, who said that again? Who was that? He was a vice president.
His name is Bo-hee Park, then retired vice president of Tongil Foundation, which owns the theater.
This isn't even like talking about this isn't like the leader of South Korea here. This is just some president dude talking about this. It was from a foundation that owns the theater. The only thing I could say is that I don't know. Maybe there was like some real estate deals going on and they're like going to pull out of that. That's the only thing I can think about.
I wonder what that theater would do if a bunch of like people from America just went there and started holding up signs in Korean telling them to stop what they're doing. Like, what would they do?
I don't know.
I
was in South Korea for like a week and a half.
and you came back 30 pounds heavier. I remember that.
Food was really good. It's a very different culture. I mean, when I was in Hong Kong compared to South Korea, you know, South Koreans very like really kind of stick to themselves. But yeah, we went to the border too of North Korea and South Korea. That was kind of intense.
I bet.
But yeah, it wasn't like really too much going on, but you know, both sides have all this like military tanks,
the guns being pointed at you
guns,
while you were.
Yeah, I mean, you know, both sides have all these guards and everything else, you know, on either side, and it's like this is so crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. That is a weird. You know, North Korea and South Korea are evidence of the Cold War more than any other place on the planet. Like that is the place where the Berlin Wall never came down. You know, it's strange.
Yeah, and then that's the other. This is the other thing that's weird. I mean, you would think because China is so close to North Korea and supplying North Korea with everything. This is why it doesn't make sense to me. Like, shouldn't South Korea be a little bit more smarter and be like, hey, let's not get with the people or the country that's supplying weapons to our enemy.
Yeah,
like, this is why it's really actually pretty ridiculous when you really break it down. It's like China managed to control really both sides at this point, South Korea and North Korea, and probably have just escalated the conflict between the two. And if it wasn't for China, I bet you anything it would have been resolved decades ago.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just China's been propping this whole thing up, and yeah, and then you got Taiwan in the middle of all of this too. Yeah, so
Taiwan doesn't care. The people there are just like, we've been threatened our whole lives. What are they going to do? That's how they feel.
And they haven't done anything yet.
They haven't done anything. It's like this every day.
And I don't really think they can. At this point, especially, you know, and that's the good thing about at least the U.S. in this case. You know, if China did anything to Taiwan, China knows that the U.S. would 100% back Taiwan and retaliate against China. So that's why I don't think. And so would Japan. I think Japan would really be willing to protect Taiwan to an extent too. I think especially but although I don't know, China has been infiltrating so many governments and organizations and companies and everything else that's what makes it challenging.
I think that's where their threat is really this like monetary and blackmailing kind of bullying that they do. Because when it comes to like physically getting involved, they seem to not do that directly. They do things behind the scenes. They'll use the triads. They'll use these different organizations to carry things out. You know, like a lot of even what people don't even understand is that a lot of what's going on in the Islamic State has been propped up by China. So a lot of what we're seeing over there in the Middle East is being propped up by China, and everyone's just like, oh, Israel and Hamas and all of this stuff. And it's like, yo, look into it. Like, follow the money. You'll see how much these big dogs on the block are actually involved with that stuff.
Yeah. Big banks, China, all of the above.
Yeah. Where's the money? The money's in Saudi Arabia. The money's in China, right? Like there's certain places where you'll find the countries that are supporting certain sides are making deals with China. And China is trying to do stuff behind the scenes. They don't do stuff directly. They manipulate things behind the scenes. It's all there.
Yeah, 100%. And from both aspects. And the other thing about that, it's like one side will launch a missile from a school building, and then it's like, oh, we'll fire back where this missile was, and then all of a sudden you blow up a school building, and it's like, you know, this is why it's so complicated.
It's complicated.
It's extremely complicated. Yeah. And then, like you said, you have China and big banks and big corporations and all this stuff that's involved, and it's where the money is. And unfortunately, the people are, you know, the suffering on both sides. It's the people on both sides that are suffering the most through all of this. And somebody is gaining through it, which really sucks.
Hmm.
You know, somebody like China and all this other stuff. So yeah, crazy world, all of this that's happening.
For sure.
Yeah. But on a positive note, we will get into well, actually it's pretty much time to jump off here, but we're going to have a lot of fun with our weirder news. So, you know, definitely if you haven't joined our rise.tv, that's like the most fun that we have is really our weirder news segment. We're going to get into some really crazy stuff. And then of course, we have our dig deep Q&A that we're going to get into also on rise.tv with the questions that you guys have in our chat. So, and we have some really good stuff for weirder news.
Yeah. So if you haven't done it, why don't you treat yourself and come join us over on rise.tv. It's only $9.99 a month. And you get so many videos with that, and it helps support our work and keeps us going. So, yeah, Ben, thanks for being here, and for everyone at home. We hope to see you over there on rise.tv, where we're going to be doing all of that fun stuff. So yeah, see you then.
The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most mysterious and paranormal places in the world. Ships, planes, and people disappear there, never to be seen again.
Are the paranormal aspects of these disappearances really just a myth?
Are the tales of boats vanishing off the face of the earth telling us something strange is going on?
Why are some missing boats showing up later completely intact, but the entire crew disappeared without a trace?
Most compelling of all, phantom ships are still being spotted at sea as mysterious ghost ships.
And that's the truly bizarre, mysterious, and fascinating research we did for you today.
So strap on your gouaches and hold on tight to the edge. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Hey, welcome to, we're going to do the dig deep, right?
Yeah, we are.
I'm just waiting for her to start.